coming up on the 5 freeway.
Approaching the 5 freeway.
Now, this is a pursuit that has been high speed at times. About 100 miles an hour was the most we have heard, but you're seeing the speeds now. He's on a surface street. This is Rinaldi. It runs parallel to the 118 freeway here in the Mission Hills area, and you see his speeds. He's running about 80 miles an hour, and at this point, it appears that there are 2 people in the car. The car is a darkly tinted black BMW. The LAPD Mission Division in pursuit on the ground and the air.
All right, Eliana, this is Kathy here. We're just watching him now as he keeps changing lanes here, and that speed is still kicked up there. At this point, are you hearing of multiple people in the car or just one driver?
At this point, we are hearing that there are 2 people in the vehicle. I believe, oh, right there. Oh, so
close calls.
Oh, my gosh. That it was a miracle that he did not hit anyone at that intersection. It was Laurel Canyon and Rincon, and now he's headed northbound here on Laurel Canyon. So we are right over the 5 freeway. We're parked near the 5 and the 118. We're in the Mission Hills area. And to answer your question again, Kathy, we believe at this point that there are 2 people in the car, both believed to be men, and at least one of them is wanted for assault with a deadly weapon, which is actually why the LAPD is not going to attempt a pit maneuver. In fact, they had originally asked for it, and then one of the officers just reminded everyone else that this was a person who was possibly armed, and for that reason, the pit maneuver is out of the question. However, they can still try to deploy a spike strip.
Are they tracking this just from the air, or do we have ground units as well, Eliana?
So there are ground units that we last saw, Michael, as well as the helicopter overhead. And as I widen out the shot, you're going to start to see some of those units. And this guy has been zigzagging his way here through the Mission Hills area, so that's what makes it so difficult sometimes to see those units. But cross traffic here, just behind that tree. Let's see what he does there. He slowed down just enough to avoid hitting that trailer. Continuing now here on Truman, and Hubbard making yet another northbound turn.
Ooh.
Yeah, desperate to get away. And I was going to say the pit maneuver might not work at these speeds. You know, some of these turns, though, they do slow down a little bit. But as you said, not attempting it because of the danger of this. And we do see one person inside right now. So how many vehicles would you say are behind as we watch them get ever closer to the suspects?
Let's see, this is my chance to actually widen out and check. I'm seeing at least 4 that I can see within my frame of the camera. So at least 4 units of the LAPD's Mission Division. And we are technically still in their area, even though this is a pursuit that has made its way over to Porter Ranch, which would be roughly the Devonshire area of the LAPD. It has been the LAPD Mission Division that has stayed on this pursuit. The driver here making a right-hand turn, that's going to make him go eastbound here. So he's entering the Sylmar area, and at this point we don't believe that the car is stolen, so that means that officers have had a chance to run the plates and figure out where the car is registered to, and with that information they can figure out where the person likely lives. Now that is important because we often see pursuits end in areas that are familiar to the driver, and so this person very well could be driving home, or they could possibly be driving to a friend's home where they hope to ditch the vehicle and take off running and hopefully hide from the authorities. But with all of the ground units behind him as well as that airship overhead, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, you know, Eliana, what is the strategy now for officers on the ground? I mean, this guy doesn't seem to be slowing down. We've seen more than a couple of close calls here. So will they pull back at some point in time and just track this from the air?
They will. If it continues to be as dangerous as what we've been seeing here in the last few minutes, then what they would do is they'll go into what's called tracking mode, which means that the ground units will pull off. They won't leave the area entirely. They'll stay in the general area and continue to monitor what the airship says in terms of the location of the driver, and they're going to be ready to swoop in and take that person into custody whenever he does come to a stop. Because the thought process behind going into tracking mode is to make the driver think that he or she is no longer being followed, and by doing so perhaps they'll slow down, start following the rules of the road, and of course just become less of a danger to the general public.
Yeah, and Eliana, we're seeing him or her squeeze through right there as they go through yet another intersection. And the thing that got my attention is here on Polk Street where you are right now, the speeds up to over 80 miles an hour. It's so dangerous you think they might want to at some point back off.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if we stopped seeing those ground units here in the next few minutes, and I'll widen out, but they're still here. So they're still in the mix. And I will add, there was actually another pursuit yesterday in this same area of a car matching the same description, and that driver was able to get away. Now, at this point, we don't know if this is, in fact, that same vehicle, but at least the want and the type of vehicle and the speeds are exactly the same to what we heard yesterday evening. And again, that driver was able to get away, and I don't believe that they ever caught up with him. So this very well could be the same person. At the time, they knew who the person was, and that is why they were comfortable in the fact that they would catch him later on. And if this is in fact that same person, they got him again.
Eliana, are you at all surprised that ground units haven't pulled off? I mean, the first car is really tracking the man pretty closely.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that they haven't pulled off, because these are residential streets. People could be out walking, and unfortunately, it's a very busy time of the day. And with Labor Day weekend, a lot of people are out and about. We've seen the traffic this afternoon on our freeways. It is busy everywhere you go. So for that reason, I'm actually quite surprised that they haven't pulled those ground units off. But perhaps there is something that these officers know that we don't. Perhaps they know that this person is just simply too dangerous to possibly lose sight of if the airship were to, for some reason, get blocked by a tree or a building and lose sight of this car. So for that reason, that could be why they're letting the ground unit stay on it. Oh, look at that. Oh, so close.
Yeah, and another thing that makes me hold my breath is we're seeing school buses there on the side, as you said, a very residential area, and this person not paying attention at all whatsoever to any kind of a stop sign, just blowing through, trying to take every opportunity to turn and possibly get away from authorities who are chasing them. So it even makes it more dangerous. And as we said, a couple of close calls there.
Absolutely, so many close calls, and to be honest, I wish he was getting on the freeway, because at least if he was on the freeway, it would take out some of the cross-traffic situations that we're seeing. It would take out the possibility of pedestrians being in the way, but at this point, he's going 90 miles an hour, guys, on surface streets here in the Sylmar area. And I work, not too far from here in the Pacoima area, and I can tell you, these streets are always very busy.
All right, Eliana, if you can, for our viewers who might just be joining us, kind of reset the scene here for us and give us a current location.
We are in the Sylmar area, very close to the 5 and 118 freeways. This is the LAPD Mission Division that is in pursuit of this black BMW with possibly 2 people inside. At least one of them is wanted for assault with a deadly weapon. Now, it's unclear what the weapon was, but sometimes the vehicle is considered a weapon, sometimes it's a gun, sometimes it's a knife, or something else. Anything else that can inflict damage on another person. Now, this is a Mission Division right now, you said in pursuit, but they could easily hand this off if they needed to, but it's up to them to decide what they want to do, even if other agencies are standing by ready to help out. Absolutely. So right now we're actually still in the LAPD's area. So if he continues headed southbound, which is the direction that he's traveling in, that will put him into LAPD's Foothill Division. And at that point, Foothill could take over the pursuit. But in all likelihood, they'll let the Mission Division units stay on it, at least in this area. Now, if the pursuit were to get on the freeway, then the CHP could take over the pursuit, because the CHP, of course, are the police of our freeways here in the Southern California area, really in all of California. And so for that reason, they're going to be better equipped to handle a chase on the freeway. And this was on a freeway, on the 118 freeway to be exact, for a time, but now it's been on surface streets since we arrived overhead.
Eliana, you mentioned early on that because the want is assault with a deadly weapon, pit maneuver is out of the question at this point, but you also mentioned a spike strip perhaps.
Yes, so initially one officer had asked for permission to pit, but then another officer reminded him, oh, wrong side of the road here, cross traffic. Oh gosh, so close. This guy is so lucky. I cannot believe how many times he's been able to avoid hitting other vehicles. And now wrong side of the road again, just zigzagging his way through traffic. Incredibly dangerous. But to get back to my point, pit maneuver out of the question. He may be armed. The officers can't put themselves in that type of danger. Spike strip, though, if they could figure out where he's headed, they could possibly deploy a spike strip up ahead.
Can you imagine what these drivers who have no idea what's coming at them suddenly see someone swerve like that, it just is just so scary for them. And we said he was lucky. They're lucky, too, that there hasn't been an accident that we've seen yet. And Ileana, let's talk a little bit about the spike strips, though, because at these speeds, that's dangerous for officers as well to be out there trying to lay out spike strips.
Absolutely, because the officers really do put themselves in danger when they deploy those spike strips, because they have to be up ahead in front of the vehicle and then try to figure out which lane he's going to be in and get that spike strip in the right lane. So that is difficult, it's dangerous, and it's just quite simply difficult to figure out where he's going to go. Oftentimes with these pursuits, people tend to circle the same area, and it gives officers a good idea of the pattern that they're driving in. This guy, I can't figure out a pattern. He is all over the place here in the San Fernando Valley. Yeah,
now in the city of San Fernando, according to our map here, again, LAPD still very close on the tail of this driver here right now. And again, the want assault with a deadly weapon. We believe 2 people inside the car. This started in Mission Hills. It's made its way through Sylmar, now in San Fernando. It speeds at times, Ileana, reaching 100 miles per hour on city streets.
It's been such a dangerous chase, Michael. And because you mentioned San Fernando PD, or the city of San Fernando, rather, I would like to mention that San Fernando police can take over this pursuit if the LAPD asks them to, or if they want to. However, San Fernando isn't a very big city, so in all likelihood, they'll let the LAPD continue to chase this person as he continues here 70 miles an hour on surface streets.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And when you bring in other agencies, the other thing you have to think about is some are eligible to do pit maneuvers in certain situations, and it just changes the whole dynamic. But right now, as you said, LAPD still in pursuit, and you were talking about patterns and not, they're not really being a pattern. But one thing we're not seeing is this person now getting on a freeway again. They're staying on these surface streets.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, cross-traffic situation there. Fortunately, the other vehicles weren't going very fast. We're right at Truman and McClay. This is a very busy area of San Fernando. There's a lot of shops, a lot of restaurants, a lot of people who could be out and about on this Labor Day weekend just simply trying to get some dinner. And now you have this guy that's going about 50 to 60 miles an hour on surface streets, not stopping for any stop signs, not stopping for any red lights, literally doesn't care about anyone but himself, just trying to get away.
Again, and you look at the density of these neighborhoods with cars, as you mentioned, those shops, those restaurants, and thankfully we haven't seen too many pedestrians out on the streets, which is a good thing. But as you mentioned, Ileana, this is Labor Day weekend. A lot of folks out of their homes, obviously because of the heat and because it's a holiday weekend.
Absolutely, especially at this time of the day, people just getting home from work. Obviously, kids already out of school for the day. It's Labor Day weekend. It wouldn't be out of the question for people to just be out and about. And we've seen a lot of people out on our freeways this evening, with all of our freeways quite busy with a lot of traffic. Fortunately, this guy, though, hasn't really encountered too many pedestrians, as you said, but he has had so many close calls with other vehicles because he really doesn't stop for any red light or stop sign, just continues to plow through as he sees fit.
Yeah, and Michael and Ileana, another thing that you mentioned is that this is not a stolen car as far as we understand. So possibly they could run the plates, make contact, get more information. There's some kind of information they could glean from that.
Absolutely. So if the car has plates, which I can't really tell at these speeds if it does, but if it does have license plates, and if they do come back to that vehicle, they would be able to run the registration and figure out where the car is registered to, at least, and send officers over to that address. And once again, another close call. At this point, I'm almost not even surprised because he's just had so many close encounters with other vehicles here on the road. Wrong side of the road here now back in Sylmar at about 80 miles an hour on Hubbard Street with across the Jackman Avenue.
Yeah, and we're getting word here from LAPD Media Relations. This began at 4:45, so we're talking well over a half hour here, and with erratic speeds, erratic driving, riding on the wrong side of the road. LAPD in pursuit here. Speaking of the LAPD, Ileana, we still have ground units in close pursuit here.
I'll be able to check as he makes this turn, and sure enough, there are. So let's see, count them as they make that turn. So I am seeing 4 units of the LAPD, and those units have to have permission to be in the pursuit. They can't just jump in. So those are just the units that the watch commander has authorized to be in the chase. And as you can see, that lead vehicle isn't giving this guy much room. He's maybe about 30 feet back, so he's staying awfully close to him. And one of the things that Jack Noyes at our assignment desk just told me over the radios is that the LAPD does believe that this is an armed individual. And for that reason, they have to be very careful when this does come to a stop, because those really could be the most dangerous parts of the pursuit, when that vehicle does at some point come to a stop.
Absolutely. Sometimes that can be the worst, when we see everything stop and then nothing is happening, you know, that they're going to be asking them to get out and throw the keys, whatever it is they want them to do, get out of the car, and then we see nothing happen. And then if you're talking about a suspect that is armed, it just ramps that up so much more and becomes an even more dangerous situation. But I would argue that the way this person is driving and on these streets with so many people out, the time of day we mentioned, you know, dinner time, people are just out and about. It's just so dangerous. So many close calls. I can't even count them in this pursuit so far.
And I would venture to say that this is perhaps an area that he is familiar with, because he is now circling these residential streets here in Sylmar, and he seems to be slowing down ever so slightly. So perhaps he's just looking for the right opportunity to try to exit the vehicle and take off running. Unfortunately for him, he's got that unit right behind him, and those officers can run pretty darn fast. So there's a good chance that as fast as that person may be able to run, or his passenger may be able to run, because again, LAPD believes that there's 2 people in that vehicle. Those officers are awfully close, and we'll be right there to take them into custody.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kath.
4 units behind him. I was thinking maybe the LAPD is thinking the same thing, that he is looking for a place to stop, to bail, and that they'll be right behind him and then can take them into custody. Right.
I mean, we're talking 30, 35 miles an hour is the slowest that this driver has gone here over the last 20, 25 minutes. But again, still these close calls we continue to see there with that white van. And we're talking a residential neighborhood once again here, Eliana.
We are, and if you noticed just about 10 seconds ago while you were talking, Michael, I saw him throw something out the driver's side window, and then perhaps the passenger threw something out the passenger side window. I couldn't tell what it was, but they were 2 small objects. They appear to be black in color. So officers are going to hang back and try to retrieve those items. Again, unclear what they were, but for some reason they wanted to get rid of them, and they wanted to get rid of them fast.
Yeah, well, the officers can easily radio in and have a unit come by and pick those up right where they saw them throw them. So, you know, it's not much to their benefit to do something like that. But look at this, just the tenacity that the LAPD has to say right behind this person, even with all of the crazy swerves and moves and scooting barely through other traffic. It's just like every time we want to make a point, you hold your breath because they're about to have another close call.
Absolutely, so many close calls, and those LAPD officers are highly trained for these types of situations. In fact, their driving facility is literally right next to us where we are right now. They do their driving courses right here off of the near the 118 freeway and the 5 freeway. So they go through at least a week of training, if I'm not mistaken, to be able to drive in these types of pursuits. So there you see the airship overhead. Again, he's still following it from the air. They always have the option of going into tracking mode, which means that those ground units would pull off and they would just let the airship follow. But considering how long they've chased this guy under these dangerous conditions, it seems like at this point, those units are here to stay.
Yeah, we just saw another close call there. And I was thinking about, of course, we're talking about the driver and the police here, but, you know, these innocent drivers here on the road who have no idea what's headed their way. I mean, that's always something that you got to keep at the forefront.
Absolutely. Did you see that? He just cut through that line of traffic and is now making yet another turn. But as you mentioned, Michael, this vehicle, it's a dark colored vehicle. You may not see it in the shadows of the street here as you're just driving along, trying to make your way home perhaps on this Friday evening to start your Labor Day weekend. And then this guy comes right at you at 80 miles an hour on surface streets. These streets are nowhere near that. I believe that the posted speed limit is probably closer to 45. This guy's about twice that.
Yeah, but one thing we can count on is that they will be making a turn sooner or later. There's one right across, almost across lanes of traffic, but has been making a lot of turns. But Ileana, maybe you can fill us in on exactly why you say at this point police don't want to try a pit maneuver when he slows down at the turns.
So initially, one officer had asked for permission, and then another officer got on the radio and reminded that first officer that this is a person who is possibly armed. And so for that reason, they're not going to try a pit maneuver because they wouldn't want to put any of their officers in a situation where they could cause the vehicle to spin and then be nose to nose with that person who's possibly armed. So for that reason, they're not going to do a pit maneuver. However, they did say that they could try to do spike strips. However, wow, look at that, just splitting through cars there, wrong side of the road. They could try a spike strip, but at this point, this guy has no rhyme or reason. There's just no pattern. So there's no way for them to figure out where would be the best place to place a spike strip.
Right, because since there is no pattern, you said no rhyme or reason, and we have the coordinated effort there from the chopper. I mean, if you don't know where this guy is going or perhaps headed or predict, then, you know, you're basically out of luck here.
Absolutely. If he's not circling the same area, he literally could be going anywhere. And earlier, he was in that Sylmar area, the residential area, where he tossed those two items. It seemed like perhaps that was the area that he was familiar with and would try to take off running there, but now he's way south of that. So now he's entering the Pacoima area. He's southbound on San Fernando Road. We're going to get pretty close to Whiteman Airport, our home airport here in Pacoima, and that's going to be LAPD's Foothill Division territory. They could join the pursuit if Mission would like them to, but in all likelihood, they'll just let Mission units continue to follow.
And you had good eyes on that when you spotted something being thrown from the car. So you said it was the driver and it looked like the passenger both threw something out of the window?
Yeah, I saw a black object coming out of both the passenger and the driver's side windows. So it's unclear if one person threw one thing and the other threw another, or if the driver was able to toss items out both windows. But again, we believe that there's two people in the car just because that is the scanner traffic that we heard about this pursuit when it first began. It was described as two people in this black BMW with darkly tinted windows. However, we can kind of see a glimpse of the driver. If you look closely, I can kind of see what looks like a red cap, perhaps, and a white T-shirt. I haven't seen the passenger at all, but at least the driver there does appear to be visible.
Again, we saw a slowing down of speeds in those residential neighborhoods, but we've just seen them sort of pick back up. And of course, you know, driving on the other side of the road. Oh, yeah. Once again, this has become protocol here for this driver, Eliana.
Oh, I really am holding my breath on those major intersections. That was San Fernando Road and Osborne, one of the busiest intersections here in the Pacoima area, right next to Whiteman Airport. You have a lot of restaurants, you have a 7-Eleven, you have a grocery store, so there's always people walking about. And you also have the train tracks. In fact, if I widen out, you'll see that the train tracks run just on the right side of the screen. The good news is, though, that this stretch of San Fernando Road is pretty open, except he has some cross traffic there, but he's going to make the turn to avoid it, making that right-hand turn or westbound turn onto Branford. Now, if he stays on Branford, he will get to the 5 freeway. So that'll be a chance to hop on the 5 either north or south. And during this pursuit, he has not been on the 5 freeway, but he was on the 118 freeway for a while.
Yeah, but it's been a while since he's been on a freeway because he's been traveling on these roads. So it makes me think, I wonder what's going to happen when we come up to the 5. Otherwise, I would be tending to think that this person is staying in an area that they know and maybe looking to bail, as we saw when they were driving around and around. But it makes me wonder, what is the plan to stay with these surface streets like he is and not really trying to get away, per se, like on a freeway to gain any ground, to get anywhere?
Absolutely. And you have to question if this person even has a plan, or if they're just hoping that they can drive around in circles long enough to where they lose the officers. It's really unclear, but it's also unclear to me why this person just turned their hazard lights on. That's not something I had noticed earlier. So he has his hazards on for some reason, and continuing here on Ottoman and Barty Avenue now. So now he's on the east side of, on the west side of the 5 freeway, which is a very residential area, highly populated, lots of cars as you see there, and continuing at about 60 miles an hour.
I was anticipating the freeway to be a tad bit more crowded, if you will, but what I saw, at least one side of the freeway, you know, traffic speeds were pretty decent. Again, we're talking about a holiday weekend, but now we're on this residential street. Once again, continued close calls here with this driver. We believe there's one other person inside this vehicle. And Eliana, the evidence gathering began as soon as they threw whatever it was out the window.
Yeah, so we saw them throw something out the window when they were in a residential area in Sylmar. And so what typically happens in those situations is that the unit that is furthest in the back will slow down and retrieve those items. They may be items that really don't matter whatsoever, but
look at this, Eliana.
There are situations where those items will matter. And that officer is getting awfully close to that rear bumper. It almost looked like he wanted to perform a pit, but he did not, and we heard that they weren't going to try. And now he just made another turn here. Now he's on Woodman, zigzagging through traffic.
It's incredible to me that they're right behind him in the middle of all this traffic and just content to keep trying to get this person, whoever they are. As you said, assault with a deadly weapon. Look at that, just determined to get away. And it's incredible to me. We have not seen an accident. Is that, as far as you know, since you've been tracking this, have you seen anything connect?
Yeah, I haven't seen him crash into anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if he caused other accidents from people who he nearly hit. Now, it looks like he may be opening his sunroof, actually. So that's something I hadn't noticed earlier either. So perhaps we'll get a glimpse to see if there is, in fact, a passenger. Because, again, on the preliminary scanner traffic was that there were two people inside of this vehicle, both described as men. And just to recap real quick, this is a person who is wanted for assault with a deadly weapon and is believed to be armed.
Yeah, so the hazards have been blinking here for a short while. The moonroof is now open once again. And again, that lead car continues to remain in pace there with this BMW. Are we at all surprised? I seem to be, Kathy. Very few pedestrians that we've encountered here.
Thank goodness.
You know, which is a great thing, but you consider the time of day and you think, wow, there'd be more people out at this time.
Yeah, we've seen a few people like in parking lots, but away from the street. We're not seeing people like right there where they're walking by. A few people on bikes, but yeah, nothing like that. Thank goodness, because this person just continuously changes lanes and doesn't stop for stop signs, doesn't pay attention to any of the rules of the road at all. Just desperate to get away in any way that they can. And again, assault with a deadly weapon is what this person is wanted for, at least one thing. And, you know, I was going to mention that we see the dark windows. They're operating on the information that maybe two people, but you never know. There could be more people inside this vehicle. So police are staying with this person. Ileana, where are we now? Looks like Van Nuys Boulevard.
Yeah, so we're on Van Nuys Boulevard now with the cross of Chase Street. We've entered the city of Panorama City, or at least the area of LA called Panorama City. It's still going to be LAPD's jurisdiction, and it's still the LAPD Mission Division that is in pursuit. And this is, in fact, still their area as well. This is a Mission Division area, so we're now back on streets that those officers are very familiar with. But this actually takes us to a side of the 5 freeway that we hadn't been on before. All of the activity had been in the Pacoima, Sylmar area, but we've now crossed over to the opposite side of the 5, and now we're in the Panorama City area. In terms of speeds, he does appear to be slowing down at least ever so slightly. Now, we've been over this pursuit literally minutes after it began. We were the first media helicopter overhead, but we don't know how much gas this guy has. So we don't know how long he can continue to run away from the officers. We also don't know why he has his hazard lights on, or what those items were that he tossed in the Sylmar area. But the LAPD, again, continuing to chase him on the ground with at least 4 units, as well as the LAPD helicopter overhead. Yeah,
LAPD not letting up. I was wondering how many more units, but again, we still have those 4 initial units in pursuit. The density of these streets, you see a series of cars here, and again, it doesn't seem to deter the driver here at all, because this person will do whatever it takes, it appears, to get away. Now, Eliana, you mentioned these slower speeds. We've seen that, but we've seen that before as well.
We did. We saw that earlier when he tossed those items. We saw him slow down significantly. It seemed like perhaps that's when he was going to ditch the car and take off running, but instead he just tossed those items, whatever they were, and continued on at high speeds, and is now in the North Hills area. So he's covered quite some area. We've been in Porter Ranch. That's where we first picked up the chase. Mission Hills, Sylmar, San Fernando, Pacoima, Panorama City, and now here in North Hills, where you can see it's a tight squeeze there. He might have clipped that white car on the right. That was a very tight squeeze there. The pursuit just off of our nose here, so we're going to get some sun here, which is why we're seeing those shadows here. But again, we're just off of Parthenia and Sepulveda Boulevard in the North Hills area.
Yeah, now we understand why the driver was slowing down, because they had a tight spot to try to get through there, and they did, sure enough, maybe clipping that car there on the right that did eventually move out of the way with no idea what was coming at them. But now back on the open stretch, we'll have to see if they start to pick up speed, and they are a little bit, but not like this driver was going earlier when Ileana, we were seeing speeds up to 80. Michael even mentioned 100 miles per hour. That was a crazy speed for these surface streets.
Absolutely. All of these streets have been at most maybe 45, 50 miles an hour, and that would probably be on the high end. A lot of the small residential streets, of course, are going to be a lot less than that, but he has been traveling at such a high rate of speed, and for some reason, now that he's on a big street, this is Sepulveda Boulevard, he's traveling, you see the speeds there at about 25 to 30 miles an hour. Now, Sepulveda Boulevard is a north-south street. It really runs through all of the San Fernando Valley as well as the LA Basin. It parallels the 405 freeway, which means that at any point, he can make a right-hand turn, and that'll lead him right to the 405 freeway. So the next one here is going to be Roscoe. That'll be his chance to get on the freeway if he wants. However, since we got overhead, we haven't seen him on the freeway. He's been sticking to surface streets, and now you see it traveling very slowly.
Yeah, this is something we have not seen.
This is odd. I mean, 29 miles an hour here on Sepulveda with 4 units behind. This is the slowest we've seen him go, Eliana.
And no traffic.
And we haven't seen him run over a spike strip. In fact, we haven't even seen officers attempt to deploy one. So I don't believe it's a situation where perhaps he ran over a spike strip and now the tires are starting to feel the effects of it. However, at the speeds he was traveling at, there's always a possibility he could have popped a tire, and that is why he's traveling so slow. I'll try to push in here as we get closer, and perhaps we'll be able to take a better look at those tires. But at this point, your guess is as good as mine as to why all of a sudden he has decided to slow down his speeds almost by a third of what he was traveling at before.
Yeah, he's ramping up a little bit now.
Yeah, a little bit, and he has the hazards on still. I don't know, I was thinking maybe it was a decision-making time where, you know, just trying to decide which way to go, but who knows? We'll keep eyes on it and see if we can tell if there's anything wrong with the car that would cause him to do that. But right now, that unit just staying right behind him. So we'll have to watch and see what he does as we're here on Sepulveda Boulevard now. Pretty wide open. We're not seeing the traffic. We're seeing the wider streets. Well, there's a little bit of traffic. So we'll have to decide what to do as we come up to this spot.
Oh.
Yeah, and he had a cross-traffic situation there, so he decided to just hang the left-hand turn there, which is going to place him towards the east now on Saticoy. So he's off of the major road there, which was Sepulveda, but Saticoy is also a big street. You have mostly homes in this little stretch, but there's also a lot of businesses coming up. And again, we just worry about the pedestrians that could be out and about. Fortunately, during the time that we've been overhead, we really haven't seen too many close calls with pedestrians. All of the close calls have been with other vehicles, and they have been some amazing close calls that this guy has somehow been able to avoid.
You know, Eliana, with the slower and reduction of speed here, does this change perhaps the strategy or plan of the LAPD and these pursuing officers, or will they just sort of let things go as they are? Well, it looks like we're really slowing down now.
Yeah, we're really slowing down now, but to answer your question, had they gone into tracking mode, now would be the time when those units would come back into play. But you see him kind of trying to reason with the officers, it seems like, trying to signal to them and talk to them, almost saying like, what, me? It's really unclear what this guy is thinking he's going to get across by doing this. But you see the speeds there, about 20 miles an hour, very slow compared to what we've seen earlier.
Okay, but not giving up, that's for sure. Almost came to a stop there, signaling officers, but not stopping and getting out of the car. Not
the best place to negotiate something, I would say.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so this is when they have to make a decision. They're going to keep following, I'm assuming, but you have to really be watching closely what they're doing, because this is a total change in attitude from what we have seen before, when the driver was simply trying to get away and weaving to whichever lane was open and crossing in front of people. But what he's doing right now, I have no idea.
It almost seemed like he had a cell phone in his hand and recording himself as he was just hanging out the window. So perhaps that's a situation where he was just trying to record what is going on. But I definitely do see something in his hand. It appears to be a cell phone.
Okay.
But again, officers believe that this person may be armed. So they have to be very careful about anything that is in this guy's hands.
Yeah, pretty cavalier attitude considering everything that he's sort of taken, these cities through, as well as the LAPD. So we're at a complete stop here right now. What's protocol here? Again, this could be a game of cat and mouse here with officers, Eliana.
Absolutely, that's what it seems like. So you'll notice that lead unit opened his door, and so what they do is the officer will stay in his seat, but he'll use his left seat to hold the door open so that they can be ready to shut it if the car takes off again. So right now they're all doing that actually. So all of the officers are opening their driver's side door, because they don't know if this guy's going to continue or if this is where things are going to come to an end. But ideally what they want to see is to see him throw the keys out of the window. It does appear that he may be opening the door, so this is a good sign. But he cannot keep that phone in his hand if he's going to get out of the car. They're going to have to ask him to toss that and anything else that may be in his hand. And of course, they want him to toss the keys just to make sure that he can't continue. But at this point, if you look at his mannerisms, it doesn't look like he's planning on complying at this point.
No, he looks agitated.
Extremely agitated.
He's motioning to them. They're in formation, definitely, as you said. They're ready to move in, and looks like they are out of the car. At least some of them, I'm sure they have weapons on him right now. They don't know what to expect. This is an armed suspect, they believe. And we have someone who's acting in an agitated fashion. So they're going to be very careful with the situation right now as they are in this residential area here on Saticoy Street. But Ileana, you had it exactly right. He's wearing a red hat, white shirt. So we had the description right. And earlier we did see several items, at least 2 items thrown out of the car. But now it looks like a cell phone in his hand is what you're saying.
Yeah, to me it looks like a cell phone, but again, they believe that he may possibly be armed. So anything in his hand is going to be something that the officers are going to want to be very careful about. And it looks like he may be exiting. So I'm going to widen out just a touch, because again, these can be the most dangerous portions of a pursuit. So he's getting out of the car. He's dropping a lot of items as he does that. His hands are up, but I think he still has something in one of his hands. So he's going to have to drop whatever that is. And they will ask him to lift his shirt. You still see the item in his hand, though. I see it in his left hand. To me, it looks like a cell phone, but of course, it could always be something else. So for that reason, there you go. He just dropped it. So good thing. He just dropped whatever that was, and now he appears to be complying, walking back in the direction of the officers. We're going to have a treat here for just a moment, but we're going to bring News Chopper 4 Alpha around so that you can continue to have a clear view of what is going on. So he is flat on the pavement right now. And again, we had heard that there was possibly somebody else in the vehicle. So a team of officers will approach the car to try to see if in fact there is anybody else inside. And one other team of officers will approach the driver and take him into custody.
Is this the standard protocol, though? Perhaps if there's someone else in the car, wouldn't they just bark orders from their vehicles to have that person also exit the car?
Typically, they would wait at their vehicles and do the commands from there. So it actually is very interesting, Michael, as you said, that they approached as closely as they did to try to see if anybody else is inside. So that is happening right now. And sometimes there is somebody else inside, but it's someone that perhaps can't get out on their own, perhaps somebody who is disabled or a child, or sometimes it's even a pet. And so for that reason, they just have to be very careful as they approach. And they will always check the trunk just to make sure that nobody is hiding back there.
Yeah, they may have information, of course, that we don't. So they might know they're either dealing with, I don't know, who knows who, but reason not to be as alarmed, or, nobody. Maybe there were eyes on it and they saw that that there was nobody there. But they are opening the trunk, just like you said, to double check.
Yeah. double checking, not seeing anyone in there, so just the driver. So initially we had heard there were 2 people inside. There's a possibility he could have dropped that person off at some point, or that there was never a second person inside. But the driver, a person who appears to be a man, wanted for assault with a deadly weapon, now in police custody here in Van Nuys.
All right, so Eliana, before we button this up, just tell us what happens now. They're going to clear the car, give the all clear, and pretty much wrap this up and take this guy in.
Exactly. They just cleared the car of any other people, but what they're going to do is what you're seeing now. They're going to move it off to the side of the road so that they won't be impeding traffic. And the other units that are here on scene will, of course, take that individual, the driver, into custody. They're going to take him back to the station to further process him. But before they do that, they're just going to do a quick search of his person to make sure that there's nothing on him that could possibly harm them. And once they feel comfortable, they'll put him in the squad car and take him away. Ideally, the officers will try to clear the street as quickly as they can so that traffic can continue to flow through the area again. But again, this is going to be Saticoy and Tobias Street. As you can see, lots of apartment complexes in the area, and the traffic already beginning to build. If you happen to live in this area or travel this way, you just might want to